This week, I was watching the news in awe as a helicopter with a dangling bucket of water flew directly over 100-foot flames that were lapping up towards this angelic asperger. My thoughts went to today's readings, all of which are about forgiveness. The image came to me because the hatred and resentment, the anger, the grief burning through our communities requires a lot more than any little bucket of water dropped in a sermon. Yet this is what we do. We speak to current realities even if the words evaporate before they hit the ground. And maybe it's enough to try, to do anything to quench the flames. Anything. Can St. John's drop a bucket of water on the flames? Can each of us in our own way slow the fire before it consumes our country or our planet? But I ask myself, how does forgiveness fit in all of this? Is forgiveness the water that will quench the fires and that which will purify the suffocating gases of division? That was not my first thought. For one thing, what is forgiveness exactly? Try going to the dictionary and you get a little help. One entry literally defines forgiveness as the act of forgiving or receiving forgiveness. Thanks a lot. So too, while Jesus mentions forgiveness several times, he never defines the term. Was this because there was a general understanding about forgiveness in his culture that we are out of touch with? And yet the Greek word translated as forgive in the New Testament, aphemi, carried a wide range of meanings, including to remit a debt, to leave something or someone alone, to allow an action, to leave, to send away, to desert or abandon, and even to divorce. In fact, the Greek word appears 146 times in the New Testament, but it is translated in most English versions as forgive only 38 of those times. What that means is that the word Peter uses in our gospel today had a variety of meanings. And so how was it that they seemed to know what they were talking about? It helps to remember that the Christian scriptures embraced and used the economic language of their day. Jesus' sacrifice was understood as paying a debt. The word reconciliation is directly connected to balancing the books, like reconciling our checkbook. In 1 Timothy, he refers to the economy of God. Being redeemed is a direct reference to cashing in one thing to receive something new. Words like gift, lending, payment, and yes, forgiveness all were associated with economic acts in relationship to fellow human beings. Jesus is referred to as a ransom for many, a word directly connected to forgiveness and associated with breaking free from the past. Payment being made to break the chains of those imprisoned, if not through their own wrongdoing, perhaps by the wrongdoing of others. Even the word grant originates from the economy of the day. Grant us peace. It's a gift carrying no debt. To borrow a quote from the film Jerry Maguire, I think forgiveness could be defined as show me the money. Some scholars point out that somewhere along the way, the idea of forgiveness evolved away from relevant and perhaps radical economic transactions into a personal emotional response. How convenient that forgiveness only requires a feeling and not a financial commitment. This is not to say that our emotional state of being is not important, but we must never forget that the faith Jesus speaks of is relevant to the very large and vast fires burning today. If we make our faith simply about our own personal peace and not about the peace of the world, then we are missing the point. Perhaps the decline in churches across this country is because we have stepped away from our true identity and checked out of engaging in policy or taking stands on the issues of our day. I believe that Jesus understood the economy of faith as something that confronted oppressive systemic realities. He embraced economic metaphors because faith was not something that encouraged stepping out of society, but rather a force to step into it, to transform it. Forgiveness, in the primal biblical understanding, was not about two people getting along, but about fairness and equality. It was about all of humanity and all of creation finding a balance, a wholeness. The early church would have something to say about more modern concepts like reparations, economic opportunity, minimum wage, sustainable environmental strategies, affordable health care, and on and on. Such things would not be seen as side hustles or hobbies for the church, but would be front and center because it's in our genes. This is all to answer my earlier question. Is forgiveness a relevant concept to today's problems? Oh, yes. I love what the Christian Assembly Church in Southern California did last Christmas. They decided to work with an organization called RIP Medical Debt, that's Rest in Peace Medical Debt, which purchases the medical debt of extremely poor families overwhelmed by medical costs for pennies on the dollar. The Christian Assembly raised $50,000, which was leveraged to pay off $5 million in medical debt with no strings attached for 5,555 poor families in 26 different counties in LA. That is biblical forgiveness in action. Now, I see myself in Peter in today's gospel. I think that in proposing that we should forgive someone up to 7 times revealed that he was hoping to put the concept of forgiveness in his rearview mirror. Been there, done that. Jesus takes him to math class. Let us first of all remember that Peter himself was going to use up his proposed 7 get-out-of-jail-free cards with ease in the days following his question. So Jesus takes Peter, and by extension us, to math class, telling him, in some translations, that the magic number is not 7, but 77. And in other translations, by the way, 70 times 7, or 490 times. Jesus then launches into another math class filled with numbers. A servant of a king owes the monarch 10,000 talents. Now, 1 talent is about 6,000 denarii, give or take, with each denarius worth a day's wage for a laborer. Thus, the first servant owes about 60 million denarii. That's 60 million days' wages, an amount so large that it exceeds the national debt of a small country. In an amazing act of mercy, that gift is forgiven by the king. Then the one who is forgiven his debt refuses to forgive someone who owed him 100 denarii. Not 60 million days of pay, but about 3 months' worth. I think the point of this math is twofold. First of all, Jesus portrays our debt as massive, and also the act of forgiveness as ongoing, a work in progress, something that requires our whole being. It's not something you put in your rearview mirror. It's a calling, our ministry, the way we stay relevant to the issues in our world. In other words, forgiveness is about healing the world, its economy, its environment, its future. I believe that everything about Jesus' life affirmed the reality of systemic sin. How much debt in poor countries bolsters our economy? How much economic strength in our country was grounded on a cotton industry supported entirely on slave labor? How have Native Americans fared since our families emigrated here? How much profit has been made by enterprises that are destroying our planet for future generations? We all have someone to forgive, and I don't mean to say that our personal spiritual state is not important to Jesus. But sometimes I wonder if my inability to get beyond the hurts I have absorbed from others is a result of not realizing the debt I owe to humanity and all creation. spending more time thinking about how I have been hurt and not enough time reflecting on the ways I have hurt others. It's hard to go there. I want to feel good about who I am and how I got here. But maybe I should feel better about being courageous enough to see my part in the pain of the world, whether it's the things done or left undone, and to seek to embrace with humility the complete, unfiltered story of my life, which may not be so majestic. When the narrative of our past is torn apart, like is happening today, and revealed for what it was, we naturally resist that. But the truth will set us free to live, not to protect a given narrative of the past, but to courageously embrace a different future. And Annie Lamont said, "Forgiveness is giving up all hope of having had a better past." I think it is true. Forgiveness is a commitment to our relationships moving forward. That commitment never ends, and it's complicated to nail down. It calls the church to become more and more relevant to the economic and environmental realities of the world and to find more ways to engage in them. It calls those of us who are privileged to recommit ourselves to embrace generosity and empathy and to understand that the debt we owe humanity and the debt we owe the earth is massive. Maybe whatever we find to do to repay our debt and to heal humanity and creation may seem like a drop in that seemingly little bucket dangling from a helicopter as it tries to douse the flames raging out of control. But it's something. It's part of our genetic makeup. It's who we are. It's what we do.